Welcome to the Growth Agenda, a podcast by asgard.ai, a growth AI platform built for modern CPG leaders. My name is Tarun Kataria, and I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Asper.
And I'm Dipita, Chakraborty, Strategic Advisor at Asgard. Together, we are here to explore what it really takes to drive sustainable and profitable growth in today's fast-moving consumer landscape.
At Asper, we work closely with commercial teams across the globe, helping them make smarter decisions across pricing, promotions, assortment, and mix. This podcast is an extension of those conversations. Every month, we will bring you candid, insights-rich discussions with industry leaders, practitioners, and experts, diving deep into RGM and how it's evolving in a world that demands faster, more precise decision-making. From real-world challenges to breakthrough ideas, from adoption hurdles to AI-driven transformation, we will unpack what's working, what's not, and what's next. So whether you are in sales, category, finance, or RGM, this is your space to think sharper, act faster, and unlock growth. Let's get started.
Welcome, everyone, to the Growth Agenda. This is our very first inaugural episode, as they say, and we are very, very excited to welcome a special guest to our episode today. But first, my co-host, Tarun. How are you today, Tarun?
Very good, Dipita. Good afternoon. I hope you're doing well. As very excited, a little nervous as well, but in a good way. But looking forward to co-hosting this with you.
Yes, the nervousness is on this side too. You know, after all, we are going to be talking to somebody who is stalwart in the industry. His career has been something that is of dreams, intersecting between large-scale operations for very large multinationals, as well as this sage with future thinking and frameworks. That has been amazing to watch. Aditya Sehgal, Addy, as we call it, he spent about 3 decades leading various businesses across Europe, India, and China in senior leadership roles at Reckitt Benckiser, now called Reckitt. And he became the president of one of their global business units, and he brings all that experience to us on how to navigate different consumer environments across the different levels of businesses. And today, he is the founder of asgard.world. So what really makes Addy unique is that in addition to all his business expertise, he's also the sage who turns complex ideas into really practical, easy-to-use frameworks. So without much ado, Addy, welcome to the Growth Podcast.
Thank you, Dipita, and thank you, Tarun. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited for this conversation and for this topic.
The pleasure is all ours. So excited, and as Dipita was talking about you, I know I was reminiscing our first conversation when we met in London. And, not just the answers, but, sometimes the questions that you asked, while simple, they kind of made me think. A big fan of your frameworks. I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but looking forward to the podcast.
Likewise.
So where are you joining us from today?
Today I am in San Francisco. So more or less the most inconvenient time zone possible for India or London.
So Addy, we know that the CPG companies are under a lot of pressure, right? The consumer spending is lower than before. Interest rates are high. There are supply constraints, rising fuel costs, and above all, there is this pressure and transformation around AI. I'm sure you've seen these macro shocks hit CPG before. What makes this moment different, and what lessons from your past crisis actually translate in this situation?
Well, I think we can separate this discussion into 2 parts. One is the real underlying core discussion, where actually CPGs are not so badly hit. And I'll tell you why I say this. I mean, if you think about it from a long-term perspective, generally CPG companies are high margin companies. Typically, they have operating margins in the 20s, a few of them maybe in the high teens, some of them in the high 20s. And they are not companies that require to borrow a lot of money typically. They are typically cash generating companies. So when you think about it from that framework, in general, CPG companies also have a penetration opportunity. There's a long runway of growth that is coming. And the companies need to be stable and focused on long-term penetration opportunities over a very long period of time. And then within that penetration, people who are already in the franchise, you figure out how to upgrade them, figure out how to give them new innovation, which they will typically be happy to pay more for. And over a period of time, both value and volume go up. So I don't think that fundamental nature has changed. It's not that things have suddenly reached 100% penetration and, things that tough from that perspective. But you don't lose sight of your overall end goal. And things like AI, as far as CPG companies are concerned, there's a massive opportunity. And then there's also a massive risk. What is the opportunity? The opportunity is you've got significant costs in your operations and significant inefficiencies. And you can use AI to really improve your operations. The risk is that on the flip side, you have smaller players who are relatively new can use AI to cover a lot of moats, a lot of knowledge that CPG companies have built over the years and decades. And now a new startup comes up with all the same technologies and all the same capabilities very quickly because of AI. So the speed of innovation, the speed of change is a risk for large CPGs. So from that perspective, I think if you run a CPG company today, you shouldn't lose sight of your consumer because that's the most important thing, how you can serve your consumer and the fact that consumers are there to be served and willing to pay to be served. Now, how you do that in the best possible manner defines your short-term turbulence and defines the pressure on you.
No, I love it when you say, right? I mean, what can't be controlled should be managed, and hopefully you manage it better. Talking about some of your frameworks, right? I mean, can you give the audiences a bit of context around your kill switch framework? You distinguish between dimmers and switches. If you apply that lens to CPG today, what are the real dependencies or kill switches, right? The companies should be paying attention to today.
Okay, so a kill switch is something that is an on and off. So, and whereas a dimmer is something that, you can tune a little bit. And people make the mistake of confusing the two. So if you think about something like what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz today, the fact that Iran can, or the US can stop all trade, in a sense, is a kill switch because it just stops everything happening. And the effect of a kill switch can be very, very dramatic. So when we think about CPG and we think about the long-term changes that are happening, I'd say some of the kill switches for CPG are things like if you consider the changes that are happening with the AI-first companies that are coming in and changes in consumer behavior. So let me illustrate what I mean. If I go back when I was growing up and you look at an iconic brand like, I don't know, like Dove or Dettol, you actually build up memory structures and as a consumer. And the lifeblood of brands are awareness and availability. So you build up awareness because you see these ads on TV and you see millions or thousands of GRPs over a lifetime. You go to stores every weekend and you see these things meter after meter of shelf. So it's burned into your brain. So when you grow up, these brands are totally familiar to you. You really understand them well. If someone says disinfection, I think of Dettol. If someone says moisturizing, I think of that. And this is built on years of this trajectory. Now think about my son. He doesn't see any TV. So he sees no advertising for Dettol or for Dove. He barely knows what those brands are other than it's there at home and his parents use them. But good, he's not been to a real supermarket or a hypermarket in years because everything is bought through e-commerce. So he has no memory structure of these brands. So now, fast forward 10 years from now, will he have the same brand loyalty to a brand like Dove or Dettol that I had? I think the answer is going to be no. And you can see this start to play out. So I'd say a big kill switch for FMCG is awareness and availability. And when you lose your long-term hold on those two drivers, you lose your long-term hold on the future. And that's not something that you can come back from easily. But reducing a little bit of ad spend, changing your distribution, launching a new product, these are all like dimmers. These are things that, go up and down. They don't really fundamentally change you in the long term. They are not life or death.
Right. That's interesting, actually, because as you were talking about, the economy is not doing well. And from my experience in China, the big brands were saying that during the time frame that you're talking about, but the local brands were thriving. And I think that parallel now is that a large CPG company might say we're not growing as fast as the market wants us to. But digital natives and now AI natives, I would say, are really growing very, very fast in terms of their growth trajectory. They seem to have a hold on the consumer in some way. consumers who don't have that memory, like you were talking about, and therefore they make progress. And as I'm thinking about it, large companies, small companies are more, a lot of them are more AI native, and the large companies are investing more and more and more into AI, right? So it's getting a little more embedded, and with the hope of being fully embedded into their decisioning, especially commercial decisioning. Do you envision human judgment to play any part in that? Maybe fast forward 5 years. Do you think it will be a combination human? What do you think is going to happen versus what do you think should happen or we want to happen?
So I think, first of all, everything that we do will have an element of AI helping us. Now, does this take away human judgment? No, not at all. Because in a world where the answer to every question is available, the most important question is, what is the right question? How do you frame the right question? And I think there is a lot of human judgment that is involved with framing the right question. So if I take my own example, I spend a lot of time with various AI tools doing various things. And people tell me, oh, you're going to stop thinking for yourself. It's actually the AI that is doing the thinking for you. And to some extent, that is true in the way that a calculator started doing the calculating for me when I started using a calculator. That does not mean that I don't know numbers. It just means that the executional part of the calculation went to the calculator. So in a sense, the executional part of my thinking goes to my digital twin or goes to an AI today. But think about what happens when you start using a calculator or you start using a spreadsheet for the first time. So you suddenly start being able to do more things. So maybe you're not doing all the strategic plus executional thinking for every task, but maybe the number of tasks you're doing per unit time has become 20 times the number of tasks. So now you're doing strategic thinking for 20 tasks in the same time, where you would have spent that time doing strategic plus executional thinking for one task. In which case is your brain most stimulated? I'd very much say, at least in my case, I feel my brain is most stimulated when I'm jamming with an AI on multiple things at the same time and going so far beyond what I could have gone by myself. So I think, bringing this back to companies, I think there is a clear role for humans, but a lot of the execution is going to be outsourced to AI. But the implications of each level of execution on the strategy, the summarization of the learnings, the embedding of the learnings, the cross-pollination with various other insights that you have in your business, all of those things remain human, deeply human. And you can try this for yourself. You give two people the same AI, give two people the same access to Claude. There is dramatic difference in the level of output that those two people generate, depending upon what questions they ask and what their mental makeup and framework is. The same is going to be true of companies as well. So depending on how AI is implemented, how coherent that AI is across the company, what tools are chosen, what level of freedom and flexibility people are given, you will end up with very different outcomes across companies. And some companies are going to be AI winners and some companies are going to be AI losers. And I'd hazard that many of the names that we see today will be AI losers because, I see the attitude towards AI from outside. And for many companies, even today, the attitude is very, very defensive. The attitude is that, listen, we have a lot to risk. We don't know what this AI is going to create. We will become liable for some things that we may not understand properly. Our data, which is so precious to us, may leak outside. And also, who knows what all my employees will start doing, playing around with AI and wasting their time and not doing their day jobs. And therefore, in company after company, they limit their AI to Microsoft Copilot and say that's all you can do. And then there is a central AI team somewhere who is building AI apps, which are supposed to be rolled out across the company. And when they are rolled out, there's a massive not invented here syndrome because the apps are frankly pretty shit. And then they don't get implemented. And by now you're like 1 year, 1.5 year behind every other company. And this distance keeps going on and on. So I think with AI coming in, there is a big opportunity that companies have to transform themselves totally. And this requires some level of strategic thinking.
When you were talking about the speed with which, as well as the objective with which you use AI, so strategic thinking to know what am I really going to do with it, What is it going to give back to me? And how quickly we want to proceed. One of the things that we often hear is people telling us, we just want to do a very small experiment. And I think it takes too much time and too much deliberation after the experiment to say go, no go, by which time you have now become a loser because somebody else did it faster because they knew what they were going to get out of it. See this every day in our business, to be honest with you. One of the areas, as you know, that is of interest in this podcast is pricing and promotions and decisioning around those. And so I have to ask you about trade spend optimization. We do live in an era of AI where both the retailer and manufacturers, if they opt in, can use AI. And yet we see trade spend optimization continuing to be a big bucket in the P&L and the most under-optimized, most assumed, I would say, bucket in the P&L with the least amount of challenge in that structure. What do you say? Is it going to change over time, or is it going to remain under-optimized? Are there human factors that are going in there?
So let's look at the P&L of a CPG company. So typically the four biggest cost lines in the P&L, depending on the company, it can change. Number one is normally COGS, or if you live in Europe, it's trade spend. Okay, so COGS and trade spend. The next one is media or marketing. And then after that, you typically have things like fixed costs. So out of these four, let's just see what's happened and how costs are negotiated. So let's look at the biggest spend, which is COGS. So how do we negotiate COGS these days? Well, it's all reverse auctions and programmatic in many cases. How do we negotiate media? Well, guess what? It's all programmatic. It's my bot talking to your bot and deciding what to do. And so now why is trade spend not programmatically aligned? Similarly, so I think that it's very, very likely that as we go forward, trade spend is going to be programmatically aligned. Now, it depends on the customer. If your takes two to tango, in this world, CPG companies think that they are marketing to customers, but to consumers. But in reality, CPG companies are B2B companies. So they are B2B2C. They drive consumer demand, but they mostly supply to retailers who are other businesses. So for CPG companies to really adopt AI in this area, it needs to work with the customer. Now, there are two kinds of customers. There are old world customers and there are new world customers. The new world customers, let's take an example of TikTok or Amazon. These are new world customers. Amazon is kind of newish world, let's say, but TikTok or maybe some of the quick commerce players in India, they are more new world. Now, for customers like these, they are extremely data driven. My old team used to say for Amazon, a happy algorithm is much more important than a happy vendor manager. And the focus used to be to hack the algorithm, not to please the vendor manager. So on something like Amazon, let's take an example of pricing. So Amazon has at some points in some countries, it has a principle that says it's not going to be beaten in price. So what Amazon is going to do is going to scrape the entire universe. It's going to see what's happening in Tesco and Walmart and everybody else. And if anybody reduces prices on a SKU, Amazon is going to reduce algorithmically without asking you. And the new price will show up immediately. Now the rest of the market will see that Amazon has reduced price and everybody will follow. So what ends up happening is you already have pricing which is being managed algorithmically by people like Amazon, who will send you a debit note for the price that they have reduced because you could not convince Tesco to sell at your recommended price. So this kind of customer already, I'd say, is quite, a native RGM can work. Typically, the flows are all connected. They are all digital. And the moment the flows are all digital and connected, you can actually build an RGM engine that works for both sides and is already operational in many cases. But then you think about older customers who don't have systems. Remember that RGM and this whole area was invented to solve a data scarcity issue originally. So originally there is all kinds of data that does not exist. 30 years ago, you have very little information about your shoppers. So you need entire teams to guess at the right price. What is the price it's being sold? You don't know. You need to guess what is the right promotion. You don't know. You need to guess the elasticity. You don't know. You cannot do experiments in real time. You don't know. You don't know your right product mix. So you built all of these teams across both retailers as well as companies to solve these problems, but you don't have real data because it's all in silos. And so you're all outside there guessing. And over a period of time, these teams get expertise in these guesses, and these people become the people who are the RGM or sales experts. And the moment you have these teams existing, it becomes very difficult for these teams to now get rid of themselves on both sides and say that actually you don't need this kind of team, you need a different kind of expertise, which is much more data driven. So I think it's taking, or it will take longer for larger companies and larger retailers, just because you have embedded teams, you have a lot of inertia, and the cost of making a mistake is very high. So if you continue your current, system, it works well enough. You think it works well enough. You're not sure if you rock the boat as a customer, as a supplier. You're not sure that if you do this RGM stuff, you may end up making things very transparent, and your retailer may actually take more from you. As a retailer, you're not so sure because you are conscious that there is inefficiencies in your system, and if you make it too transparent, maybe the supplier will take some margin away from you. So both of them are kind of locked in their positions and are not sharing all the data that needs to be shared to solve this problem going forward. But this, I think, is a temporary hiccup. I think it's going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. These companies will start getting outcompeted more and more with faster companies who are more efficient through the cycle, and they will change. And when that happens, you will have RGM, which also becomes more programmatic, like media.
Some comfort in the predictable nature, the unoptimized nature of what is happening today. Bigger push has to come from somewhere for it to dramatically change. So right now, there's a little bit of a dimmer switch operation. Maybe let's increase the ROI a little bit here, a little bit there. Which is really interesting.
Tarun, the AI figured that you are rich enough to pay $20,000, and that's why it's charging you $20,000. But if you were sitting in a more regulated country, then maybe it would have only charged you $200 for the ticket. And we seem to be happy to, as consumers, AI pricing in that kind of area. So why would we be so unhappy with taking it for buying a bottle of Lysol?
I don't know about being rich. Well, that is definitely the dream, Addy. Hopefully that comes true one day or the other. But when you talked about airlines, right, it quickly connected in the sense that my son plays soccer, right? And his team made to the nationals, which is happening in St. Louis. And within 2 days, because now you have few families or, multiple, because the club, other teams qualified as well. An average ticket to St. Louis from New Jersey, which was 300 to 500 return, is starting to cost like $1,000. So to your point, that there is definitely algorithms at play that are actually governing and looking at that supply and demand. And the moment they see hyper demand, they basically are trying to leverage the supply in the most optimized ways. Maybe there are cues across the industry that the algorithms can learn. By the way, one thing on the algorithm, I was joking with my son. I was like, we would rather buy a big TV than go to a match and spend all that dollars. But there's no way to beat the experience. So hopefully when the tickets open, we get our fair share.
And that's exactly what the AI is counting on.
Yes, I hope so.
In June, you're out of choices because you can't start driving.
I know.
We've taken care of that too.
Yes, yeah, I think that is also not an option that I can exercise, right? So maybe I'll just have to.
No, but there are other options as well, which is on your side. You set an AI to optimize that price for you, and you'll be surprised how many solutions it will find you. So, for example, it's going to look at all kinds of day parts. It's going to figure out if you're even the slightest bit flexible. It's going to maintain a 24/7 look at the pricing, because pricing is dynamic by minute. You need to make sure that your AI, you clear the cookies and go through a new browser. Maybe you log in through a VPN that comes out of India or Vietnam, and now suddenly your pricing is much lower. So the thing with AI created problems is that there are AI created solutions as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah, awesome. Trying to get back, Adi, I know we talked about technology, we talked about the industry, and how the runway is still pretty bright and long. Of course, the relative challenges from year to year, but we've all seen how organizations and the talent in the organization plays a significant role in terms of where and how they deploy and think about transformative capabilities, right? I mean, versus, being defensive and protective, right? I mean, so a little bit on that talent, right? I mean, you've led large organizations, and you personally, I know, having spoken to you a couple of times, your Asgard venture, right? I mean, so you're building your own AI-led venture, and you write extensively about technology and how technology can be disruptive to drive that nonlinear growth. So what capabilities do you think tomorrow's commercial leaders will need that today's leaders may not fully appreciate?
So let's go back to the Middle Ages. Now you're a swordsman or the swordswoman, and you're a great swordsman. You're fantastic at your job, and you're like one of the. If you watch Game of Thrones, let's say you're one of the Kingsguard. Fantastic. Now there is some new technology, and someone invents a bow and arrow. Now you're waving your sword in all these elaborate forms, and the guy shoots you from 100 meters away. Well, just by being a better swordsman, you're not really going to be able to survive that. And it's the same thing with business today. You're a great brand manager. You really understand your brand. Fantastic. Now you're competing with someone who does not play by the same rules. You're playing soccer, they are playing chess. And the difference is made by them using AI to completely transform what they do, the quality and quantity of the output. So I'm competing with you. You have now 5 times the quality and 20 times the quantity of output that I do. Both of us are competing for a job. Who's going to get the job? I may be the best in the old world, but I may be less than zero in the new world. So I think the first thing to consider is that rather than saying that AI is a tool for few, I think it should be democratized. And the expectation that we should have is that everybody should be AI enabled to the maximum level that they can. Everyone should have AI and really be expected to use AI. Now, how do you expect people to use AI? Not by telling them to use AI. Well, let's say the person had an output of X. Next month, just tell them, I expect 5X. And by the way, this is less than what I'll expect the month after, which is 10X. Now, to get from now to 5X, here is an AI that I'm buying for you or you have access to. It's called Claude or it's called ChatGPT or whatever, doesn't matter. And this is your tool. And either you're going to make it, or in any case, even if you don't make it to that level, you still will make dramatic progress compared to where you are today. And I think that's very important because people have taken this. I know many people who've taken this attitude that says the CTO will do an AI project and then we will roll it out and we will tell you what to do. Do that, sure. But don't stop people from. Another way to explain this is very often in the West, we talk about building businesses, building capabilities. Building is an architect metaphor. So what this means is you have an architect who makes a blueprint. Then this blueprint gets resourced. It goes to some kind of planning system. In a company, this may be a senior team who's approving what AI tools are to be used or whatever. Then once the plan is done, then the resource allocation is done. And let's say all these bricks and cement land up at a site. Then the people start building the building. But the role of the people is really to be bricklayers and masons, and they are just laying the bricks. They're not thinking about it. They're not expected to think. If they think too much, then they will have to deviate from what the company is telling them to do, or the architect, and that's not allowed. Now, eventually, the building is built. If the architect makes a mistake, you're screwed because now the walls are not going to align. The building has a problem. So you have a paradigm in which you have people who are drones, who are not expected to win. So this is one paradigm. It works quite well in some situations. Another paradigm is a much more Eastern kind of paradigm of growth. It's called the gardener metaphor. So in this case, you're not building, you're growing. How do you grow? Well, first of all, you're a gardener. So you find a patch of land that has likely to be fertile. So you find people who are smart. That's your fertile land, who fit the company culture maybe. Then you are going to plant seeds. So what are seeds? So you can plant an apple seed or a pear seed. Now you can't exactly say how the apple tree will come out. What will be exactly a 3 feet 4 inches high? But you know broadly what an apple tree looks like. So now you plant your apple trees, then you plant your peach trees, and you plant. Now your role as a gardener is to protect these trees, is to give them, to nurture them, is to help them, is to give them water, give them fertilizer, whatever. And then whose responsibility is it to grow? It's the tree's responsibility. Some trees are not going to make it and they will die, but that's fine because you can put more seeds and that's fine. You're not expecting every seed to survive anyway. And by the end of it, you now have this beautiful garden. Now, the beautiful thing is, as a gardener, you have the freedom to, because the tree is focusing on growth, you can focus on setting up more trees. You can focus on doing other things. So now you have this great contract where the leadership of the company can focus on what should you do next? What kind of seeds should I plant next? But it's very fulfilling for the tree itself to grow, much more fulfilling than a mason or a bricklayer who's just following a template that's been given to them. And when we roll AI out, this is a very important framework to think about. How are you going to use AI to totally transform the mental and physical capacity of that each person who is in your team? And when you do that for 1,000 people or 50 people or 5 people, the amount of output that is going to come out of the system is 5, 10, 50, 100, 500 times what it is today. And you cannot architect this. You cannot predict what that output is going to be. And you cannot predict how all of those outputs will intersect to create great things for your company. So I'd say that's a very important difference in how to think about rolling AI out in companies. It's about using AI to uplift every person, not just instruct them in what to do.
No, I love that analogy. I'm going to borrow or steal or make a version of it, but thank you for sharing. Dipita, any closing thoughts from your side?
I think, this was a masterclass in how to think about the overall AI journey, adoption, and commercial decisioning within a company. I wanted to thank Adi, and we look forward to more from him, hopefully soon. Over to you, Tarun.
Yeah, no, Adi, thank you. As always, every time I talk to you or, we have this conversation, there's so much that you unpack. I feel that there's so much that I need to think back on, but thanks for sharing. And hopefully to the viewers, they found this useful. Again, thank you so much. One last question, Adi, that we are trying to close this going forward, hopefully make it consistent, is what would be that one hack that you would share with everybody that had the most profound impact, be it personal or professional, right? Whatever comes to your mind.
Okay. So, let me give you it's not nothing profound about it. It's a very prosaic hack. It's something that everyone should do. So whenever you ask, an AI or an LLM any question, let me tell you a story before this actually. So many years ago, I think the story is true, but it may not be. So Henry Kissinger was the Secretary of State for the US, and he had a very smart assistant. So this assistant used to prepare briefs for him. So one day, Henry Kissinger asked this guy to prepare a brief for something to do with China or whatever. So the guy prepared a brief and gave it to Henry Kissinger. So the guy comes in the morning, gives him the brief. So Henry Kissinger says, okay, come back in 15 minutes. So he comes back in 15 minutes. So he looks at him and says, is this the best you can do? The guy says, no, I can do better. So he goes away and he does better. And the same thing happens the next day. And this goes on for a week. At the end of a week, this guy has created a real masterpiece. It's finely honed. All the logical points are there. And Kissinger asks him, is this the best you can do? And the guy says, yes, this is the bloody best I can do. And then Henry Kissinger says, okay, now I will read it. And he had never read it before, of course. So here is the hack. Whenever you ask your AI a question, let it answer. Don't read the answer. Just say, is this the best you can do? Do that twice. And you're going to get a materially better answer than you would have got otherwise.
Well, I'm going to definitely try it today. Thank you so much. Again, thank you, Adi. It was a pleasure. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. We'll probably love to have you back sometime. But again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Dipita, and thank you, Tarun.
That brings us to the end of this episode of The Growth Agenda. I hope you enjoyed it. We hope the conversation gave you real fresh perspective on how to think about growth as a strategy, as a continuous data-driven and decision-led journey as well. At Asper, we believe growth comes from embedding intelligence directly into commercial decisions, not just analyzing outcomes, but actively shaping them. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, share, and stay tuned for our next conversation, where we will continue to explore the future of RGM. And if you'd like to learn more about how Asper is helping CPG leaders unlock value across pricing, promotions, assortment, and trade, visit us at asgard.world. Until next time, keep driving growth.